Good morning, boys and girls. This video is for Thursday, April 2nd. So we'll go ahead and start with our morning message and read aloud. Okay, so morning message. I just want to encourage all of you to do the pledge with your family and send it in to me so that I could send it in for Dr. Smith to share with the whole school. If you don't want to, that's okay, but I would love to see it. I think the rest of the school would love to see it as well. The easiest way to do that, you can do it through Facebook if you are on that page, or on Class Dojo. The only way to send a video to me is through your account, okay? Not through your parents' account, but through your account. So where your parent has their picture up on the top left of their screen inside of a little circle, they'll click on it, and then there'll be one that says your name, and that is your Class Dojo account. And there's an assignment that says Pledge of Allegiance, and you can send in a video that way. Okay, so that's what I want to encourage all of you to do if you can and when you can. Okay, so today I'm going to read Balloons Over Broadway, and on Thanksgiving morning, there's always a parade, the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade that takes place in New York City in front of this big department store, Macy's. We have them here too, but there's a really big one in New York. And they put on this parade every year. And this is about the man who started with these big balloons that you see at the parade. So we're going to go ahead and read about him. So this is it's called the Tony Sarge Marionette Book, and it just talks about all of the different marionettes. Marionettes are basically like puppets. You can see here where they have the different strings to make the different parts of the body move. And so that's what people back in the past used to use for puppets, and they still do sometimes, but we saw it a lot more in the past. I won't read all of this because it's more of a biography, but but when we come back to school, I will bring this book, and anybody who wants to look at it can look at it. And by the way, even if you are not in my class, like if it's when you're in second grade and you remember, oh yeah, I wanted to see that book because you forgot when we came back to school because we were so excited, I want you to come and visit me when you're in second grade too. Okay, Balloons Over Broadway. And this is a story of Tony Sarge. And there's a real picture of him. We're just going to see cartoon pictures of him for the rest of the book, but that's how he really looks. He was born in 1880, and he passed away in 1942. Okay. It says, every little movement has a meaning of its own. Okay, so it says, from the time he was a little boy, Tony Sarge loved to figure out how to make things move. He once said he became a marionette man when he was only 6 years old. You see him there playing with all of his marionettes? His father had asked him to feed their chickens at 6:30 in the morning every day. Tony had an idea. What if he could feed the chickens without leaving his bed? He rigged up some pulleys and ran rope from the chicken coop door to his bedroom window. That night, he spread chicken feed outside the chicken coop door. The next morning, Tony pulled on the rope and the door to the chicken coop opened. The chickens ate their breakfast. Tony stayed snug in his bed, and his dad, so impressed, never made Tony do another chore. When Tony grew up, he moved to London, where he discovered that no one was making marionettes for kids anymore. So out of wood, cloth, and string, Tony began to make puppets. He figured out ways to make his marionettes movements so lifelike that they performed as if they were real actors. Word soon spread about Tony's amazing marionettes. When Tony moved to New York City, the Tony Sarge marionettes began performing on Broadway. In the heart of New York City in Herald Square was the biggest store on earth, R.H. Macy's department store. Macy's had heard about Tony's puppets and asked him to design a puppet parade for the store's holiday windows. So Tony made new puppets based on storybook characters, then attached them to gears and pulleys to make them move. See all the storybook characters he used? There's Humpty Dumpty. So this is what the store windows at Macy's would look like. And all of the kids would go and look and see all of the different things that were there. But Macy's had an even bigger job in store for Tony. Many of the people working at Macy's were immigrants, and as the holidays approached, they missed their own holiday traditions of music and dancing in the streets. Macy's agreed to put on a parade for their employees, and they hired Tony to help. Tony, too, was an immigrant, so he loved the idea of creating a parade based on street carnivals from all over the world. He made costumes and built horse-drawn floats, and Macy's even arranged to bring in bears, elephants, and camels from the Central Park Zoo. The animals joined hundreds of Macy's employees on Thanksgiving Day, 1924, winding their way from Harlem to Herald Square. It was a dazzling parade. In fact, Macy's first parade was such a success that they decided to have one every year on Thanksgiving Day to celebrate America's own holiday. So there's what the parade looked like. Each year the parade grew, but when Macy's brought in lions and tigers, in addition to the bears, elephants, and camels, the animals roared and growled and frightened the children. So they say, Tony, can you think of something spectacular? So Macy's asked Tony to replace the animals. And Tony's on the other part of the phone. He said, sure I can. See how friendly he looks? So there's the lions. And then here they are on the phone. Tony hoped to replace the animals with some kind of puppets, but his marionettes were less than 3 feet tall. He would have to make much larger puppets in order for them to be seen in the parade. And how could he make them strong enough to hold up in bad weather, yet light enough to move up and down the streets? Tony knew of a company in Ohio that made blimps out of rubber, the perfect material for any weather. When he called the company and showed them his sketches, they agreed to make what Tony wanted. Still, how would Tony make his big puppets move? Then Tony had an idea from an Indonesian rod puppet in his toy collection. On Thanksgiving Day, Tony's creatures, some as high as 16 feet, spilled into the streets and the crowds cheered wildly. Part puppet, part balloon, the air-filled rubber bags wobbled down the avenues, propped up by the wooden sticks. But now the sidewalks were so packed with people that only those in the first few rows could really see the parade. Tony realized his puppets would have to be even bigger and higher off the ground, and though the sticks helped to steer the puppets, they were stiff and heavy. Tony wanted his balloons to articulate, to move and gesture, more like puppets. But how? With a marionette, the controls are above and the puppet hangs down. So with a marionette, they have the thing that controls the animals up on top of the animal, and they go down. Then he says, but what if the controls were below and the puppets could rise up? It's this big idea. During the next year, Tony set his new idea into motion. This time, he asked the company in Ohio to make balloons out of rubberized silk, as strong as rubber but lighter than rubber alone. Most important, Tony ordered the balloons to be filled not just with air, but with helium too. Since helium is lighter than air, it would make the balloons rise. Once the puppets were completed, they were deflated and shipped back to Tony in New York. Tony did not know if everything would go as planned. He's saying, what if the balloons are filled with too much helium? What if one hits a sharp object? Will they fit under the elevated train track? See, in New York, they have these trains that run up high. It was still dark on Thanksgiving morning when Tony filled the balloons with helium, tethering them down with sandbags. By 1 p.m., the sidewalks were packed with people ready for the parade. Then, one by one, Tony cut the lines to the sandbags. Says, let's have a parade. And the magnificent upside-down marionettes rose up into the sky. So I'll hold this back so you can see how it is. There's people down at the bottom. The balloons flying up high. Nodding and waving to the crowds below, they sailed past Central Park. They sailed down Broadway. They shimmied and swayed through the canyons of New York City. High above the crowds, they flounced in the afternoon wind, pulling the rope handlers this way and that. Yet with every heave-ho, the balloons gestured and articulated like wild puppets, and the crowd screamed for more. After the balloons were eased under the L, they ended in front of Macy's at Tony's Wondertown windows. It was a parade New Yorkers would never forget. And from that day on, every Thanksgiving morning, crowds have lined the sidewalks of New York City to see what new balloons would rise to the skies for Macy's famous parade. Tony Sarge, the puppeteer who loved to figure out how to make things move, had set the stage with a little rigging for a puppet to be anything anyone could imagine it to be. And that's the end. Here's a note from the author, and she talks that she likes to write lots of stories about people who really lived and how they did things special just by continuing to try and try and try. Okay, so again, I will bring this book back to school, and because there's lots of really cool things and pictures in it, and I think you all would like to see it. But what I really love about that book is that it shows us that not most of the time when we get a new idea and we try it, it doesn't always come out perfect. Most of the time it doesn't. But you saw what Tony Sarge did. He kept thinking. He's like, okay, so that part didn't work. They were too small. So what can I do to make them bigger? And then he was wondering, how can I make sure there's not too much helium? How can I make sure that they go underneath the train tracks? How can I make sure? And so he was trying to problem solve all of those things that might come up. And sometimes we can't think of everything, but then when we try it, then we remember, oh yes, that's why we practice so many things in school. We practice fire drills so that way we can see, oh, we didn't even think that maybe something like this could happen. So now we know to do a new thing to make it better. So I wanted everybody to see that that when you try something and it doesn't work the way you wanted it to the first time, don't get discouraged. That's exactly what happens most of the time to everybody. And the really great inventors, they just try again after they learned what didn't work, because every time something didn't work, they learned something new. So that's why I really like this story. So I'm going to go on to reading. reading? Okay, so for reading, what you're going to do today is you are going to open up reading A to Z. You've been reading Stars and Stripes all week, okay? And today I want you to go and I want you to read it to somebody at home. Read it to your mom, dad, grandma, pet. Just read it to somebody. Show them how hard you've been practicing and what you can do, okay? And teach them about the Stars and Stripes. So that's what I would like you to do for reading, okay? Now, and that's for social studies also. For science, I want you to pick any living thing inside of your house. You know what? I'm not going to give examples because I want you to use your imagination. Any living thing inside of your house, and I want you to draw it, and then draw a picture of it and write a sentence about what it depends on. Because remember, we all depend on something. Let me show you our interdependence. Oh, well, I must have accidentally taken it off, but it's in Dojo, that interdependence anchor chart that had the fish with the plant, and we know that the fish is able to eat the plant and the plant is able to grow because of the fish, so that way they both depend on each other. I want you to tell me what the living thing in your house that you find, I want you to tell me what it depends on in a sentence, okay? And then lastly, for math, today you're going to do pages 683 and 684 in this book, okay? Now, if you did not get this book, then just have your parents let me know, okay? Have your parents let me know, and then I'll find a way to get the pages to them and let them know how they can get the book later. But in the meantime, you can get the pages to you, okay? And this is volume 2, because there's 2 of them. There's volume 1 and there's volume 2. So this, you're going to be doing this page, and it's talking about equal parts. Remember, something cannot be a fraction unless all of the parts are equal, okay? All right, that's what's showing equal parts. And then this page is the same thing, showing equal parts. Remember on our anchor chart from yesterday, I was showing you one half. This is one half because the two halves are the same size. So if we were to take half of it away, we would have one half of that circle. This is not one half because the circle is not divided up into 2 equal parts. Okay, over here we have half of this rectangle. Here we do not have half of the rectangle. Who colored in half of the triangle in an example of what was not half of the triangle? If you did, send that in to me. I'd love to see it. 1/4. This is an example of 1/4 because they divided up into 4 equal pieces. This is not divided up into 4 equal pieces. It's divided up into 4 pieces, but not 4 equal pieces. Okay? And 3/4. This is 3/4. This is not 3/4. Okay? So just keep that in mind when you're doing your math, that in order for something to be broken up into equal parts, all of the parts have to be the same size. It has to be fair. Pretend that you're dividing up something that you really love, like a pizza or a pie, and it has to be fair. If it's not fair, it's not a fraction. Okay? So that is it for math for today, and so that is it for your lessons for today. And I think I want to say you all have been doing a great job. I've been loving seeing your pictures and your videos of the work that you've been doing. Keep it up, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.